Hello, I'm Nicolette Pomba van Zyl, editor of ESI Africa, coming to you from the African Utility Week studio. Today I have with me Sisa Njikelana, who is the chairperson of the South African Independent Power Producers Association. Welcome, Sisa. Sisa, I want to start off with looking at the growth of renewable energy in Africa and even globally. It's been really a phenomenal growth. That wasn't really expected. What are your thoughts around that growth in the markets?
I suppose one can say from the perspective of independent power producers, that's very encouraging, and one also assumes and expects that there will be more players getting into this sector, in future. On the other hand, one hopes and trusts that governments will ensure that more space is given for renewables in future and ensure that they buttress economic growth in various countries. That obviously does not leave state power utilities out of that realm. In other words, renewable energy is not just something for independent power producers only. As far as I'm concerned, state power utilities should get into that field. Coming to Africa, the reports that one goes through various institutions, whether the UN or other global bodies and even private consulting companies, is that there is not just interesting but encouraging growth of renewables throughout Africa. I may not necessarily give out the figures. And coming down home, we obviously know that the Renewable IPP procurement program, was the trigger point, for private sector participating in South Africa, to the extent now that the government has been able to take out other non-renewable technologies with confidence, because the test case or test ground has proven, that private sector participation can be ushered in, but also on the other hand, renewables in particular. One other thing that the renewables procurement program has displayed is that even if a technology at its introductory phase is expensive, but once massification comes in visible volumes, we see the reduction of prices.
Right. So, as you mentioned, the South African renewable energy program has been very successful, and building on the success, what is the one thing that you think they can change around that program?
One, if government could be quite flexible in terms of structuring the allocations in the integrated resource plan. If also government could allow other new technologies to come in the IRP. I am making reference of technologies such as hydrogen fuel cell, biomass, increasing the allocation on waste to energy technologies. Remember, focus on landfill sites has got its own environmental benefits, for example. And in terms of crafting the ownership, I suppose one can say government should also be very creative in ensuring that local ownership is increased, because at this stage in time it's less than 50%. Black ownership should also grow as much as is possible, and in particular women stakes, as well as youth and the disabled people.
Okay.
Those are the areas that we need to look into more in depth, together with the government. Beyond that, We also should be ensuring that the community upliftment program, are improved to higher models, because there have been allegations that some of the successful bidders have unfortunately taken anything so that they can just stick the scoreboard, and that's rather unfortunate. And I'm sure through the various IPP formations, working together with the government, we can also improve that,
Right.
Yeah, that's quite a long menu, but it's a long menu triggered by nothing else but the experience of the past 5 years, having gone into the renewables procurement program.
Right.
Of course, one can still repeat and say South Africa takes the pride that globally there's been quite a number of countries that have drawn lessons from our own programs, let alone attracting major players to come and invest in various forms, whether the technical companies or the financial investors themselves.
I like the way you bring in the youth into that response. And so one of my questions to you is, with a startup company wanting to enter the renewable energy sector, what is the best advice that you can give them?
They must join the South African Independent Power Producers Association. Beyond that nice marketing spin, frankly, I'm one of the people who have already started what I call information sharing sessions. And I hope pretty soon I'll be coming down to Cape Town for those information sharing sessions. This arose out of a breakfast that was organized by the UKZN as a leadership and business graduate school. In that breakfast, that was in May last year, what I observed was there were a lot of information-seeking questions. And my response to them was that, why don't we have an information sharing session so that we can explain to you what is independent power production and what does it mean to be an IPP and how do you prepare for that. I've held one session through the Progressive Business Forum in Johannesburg. There was a good 10 out of 120 participants, and from there we'll definitely be pulling in other parties, and we'll try and do provincial-based activities with no other focus other than to actually drive, as I say, that information, sharing session. Because to be an IPP is not, at this stage, it's not that easy.
I can imagine.
Over and above that, one is actually concluded, that is through cyber, a collaboration agreement with the Energy and Water SETA, and we're on the process of concluding another collaboration arrangement in the form of an MOU with the UN Women's Entity, as you guess where that's slanting to. And already one of the things that we hope will arise out of a needs assessment with our target beneficiaries would be, how do you prepare yourselves to be an IPP?
Because in the renewable energy sector, one of the things is that it's going to grow job creation. So we need to have more startups in that sector. So
remember also, the convention from 2011 up to now has been in the main your 50, 70, 80, 100 megawatt farms.
Yeah.
Well, late last year or in the middle of last year, we had the small IPPs program coming in.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Which was quite encouraging, but of course there were still some challenges on transaction costs, which is one of the things, I'm glad I've remembered this, that within the renewable energy procurement program, one of the things that we need to be creative to assist small IPPs in the transaction fees, because they are very, very exorbitant for them. Those with deep pockets, that is fine. However, what I wanted to also add is that enter embedded power generation. 2 panels even in your house, 1 or 2 micro.
Please go there now as the draw commences momentarily. That's the analog stand standing in 5. Good luck.
Competition. You can add 1 or 2 micro wind generators of about 500, 1,000, 3,000, 5,000 watts, you know. Surely without necessarily knowing the figures there, even yourself you can sense in terms of accessibility for me as a small entrepreneur.
Right.
That's also quite achievable as compared to buying a 1.2 megawatt wind turbine.
Exactly.
You know?
Yes.
So really the evolution of the independent power production industry, which has been triggered by renewables, is now bringing, you know, other spaces, which one can confidently say, even for really small entrepreneurs, or rather one would say small IPPs, it will be a reality. Even if we are in a village, if one of the government, you know, development financing institutions can really assist you, if there's really a market, you know, in your area to put in either biodigesters or, you know,
So there's
1 or 2
definitely
panels.
space for
There is
small
space.
IPPs.
The only thing we'll plead is government to ensure that regulations are in place for embedded generation.
Right.
The rest will be history.
That brings me to my last question, Sisa, which is a very important question, where Brian Molefe, the CEO of Escom, had commented that he was, or the organization is disappointed in renewable energy sector in terms of not providing the energy when Escom would need it during the peak hours. So very briefly, what is the organization's response to that?
SAIPA's response is also one of disappointment. And I'm sure any other IPP formation would respond likewise. Number one, up to now, I would dare say almost 6,000 megawatts of power has been committed. And out of that almost 6,000 megawatts, we've got 2,000 megawatts that's flowing into the grid. Now, how does that flow? It's according to the program as a whole, which program is driven by the government in conjunction or with the response from independent power producers. So that's my emphasis, that, you know, if the finger is pointing at the independent power producers, unfortunately, we are not the ones who initiate. We've responded, we've gone out of our way to do everything that's necessary. Hence today we can talk about more than 2,000 megawatts of power being generated, you know.
On the Innovation Hub stage, that's the closing keynote of the conference, followed by the conference conclusions and energy model for the country.
Every second or third month, quietly, another solar farm, wind farm, biomass project is being concluded and then connected to the grid. As I'm sitting here with you and me, and by the end of this year, I wouldn't be surprised that we would be talking of 2,500 or even close to 3,000 megawatts of power flowing through the grid. I don't know, because it depends on the progress itself. So I would plead with Escom to be patient, because as far as cyber is concerned, there is progress. It may not be as fast as Escom is expecting.
Thank you very much for that response, Sisa, and that's all we have for time for today. Thank you. Thank you for watching. I'm Njikelana, editor of ESI Africa, coming to you from the African Utility Week studio.